The church doors remained closed. I stood at the altar in my white dress, bouquet trembling in my hands, watching those doors like they might burst open any second. My parents weren't there. The ceremony was supposed to start 15 minutes ago, and the guests were getting restless. I could hear the whispers, feel the pitying stares burning into my back. Mike squeezed my hand, but even his touch felt distant. My mother had promised she'd be there. She'd helped me pick this dress, had smiled when I showed her the venue. Now, standing here alone, I realized those smiles had meant nothing. The minister cleared his throat awkwardly. Someone's phone buzzed. A baby cried in the back row. Everything felt wrong, hollow, like I was living someone else's nightmare. When I finally walked down that aisle without them, I made myself a promise. They would never get another chance to hurt me like this. The reception was torture. Everyone asked where my parents were, and I lied through my teeth. "They're sick," I said. "Last-minute emergency." But their absence hung over everything like smoke. Mike's mother, Patricia, kept giving me these looks, like she'd known all along that my family was trash. She leaned over during dinner and whispered that maybe my parents knew something she didn't, that maybe they had good reasons for staying away. The comment hit like a slap. I excused myself and locked myself in the bathroom, mascara running down my face. Through the door, I heard Patricia telling someone that she'd never trusted me, that Mike could have done better. My wedding day, the day I'd dreamed about since I was little, had become my worst nightmare. When we left for our honeymoon, I couldn't even feel happy. I just felt abandoned, broken, and utterly alone. Mike changed after the wedding. He stopped defending me when Patricia made her little comments. He stopped asking if I was okay. Instead, he started working later, coming home exhausted and irritable. When I tried to talk about my parents, about how much their absence had hurt, he'd sigh like I was being dramatic. "They probably had their reasons," he said one night, echoing his mother's words. That's when I realized the truth. Patricia had poisoned him against me from the start. She'd never wanted us to marry, and now she was using my parents' betrayal as proof that she'd been right. The argument started small but grew uglier. Mike accused me of being too sensitive, too needy. I accused him of choosing his mother over his wife. 6 months in, our marriage was already dying, and I felt like I was drowning with no one to pull me out. I finally called my mother. My hand shook as I dialed, part of me hoping she'd have some explanation, some reason that would make everything make sense. She answered on the third ring, her voice casual, like nothing had happened. "Oh, honey," she said when I asked why they'd missed my wedding. "Your father and I just didn't think it was the right time. You know how these things are." I couldn't breathe. That was it? That was her explanation? No apology, no regret, just a casual dismissal of the most important day of my life. I pressed her, demanded real answers, and she got defensive. She said I'd always been too dramatic, too demanding. She said maybe if I'd planned something simpler, something less showy, they would have come. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me. I sat there, phone in hand, realizing I'd been holding on to hope for nothing. I stopped sleeping. Every night, I lay awake replaying that phone call, my mother's words echoing in my head. Mike noticed but didn't care. He was spending most evenings at his mother's house now, leaving me alone in our apartment. Patricia had won. She'd turned my husband against me, and my own parents had given her all the ammunition she needed. One morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. I'd lost weight, had dark circles under my eyes, looked years older than I actually was. That's when something inside me shifted. I was done waiting for other people to validate me, to love me, to choose me. If my parents didn't want me and Mike had already chosen his mother, then I'd choose myself. I started researching career opportunities in other cities, places far from this toxic mess. I was going to leave, and I wasn't looking back. The job offer came from Seattle. Director of marketing at a growing tech startup, double my current salary, and a chance to start completely over. I accepted without telling Mike. When I finally broke the news, he barely reacted. "Do what you want," he said, not even looking up from his phone. That was it. No fight, no attempt to save our marriage. Just indifference. Patricia, however, had plenty to say. She called me selfish, accused me of abandoning her son. The irony was almost funny. She'd spent our entire marriage pushing me away, and now she was angry I was leaving. I filed for divorce the next week. Mike signed the papers without a word, probably relieved. On my last day in town, I drove past the church where we'd gotten married. The memories didn't hurt anymore. They just felt empty, like they'd happened to someone else. Seattle was waiting, and so was my new life. Seattle welcomed me like a fresh start. The city was gray and rainy, but it felt clean, honest. At work, I threw myself into campaigns and strategies, proving myself with every project. My boss, Trevor, was supportive and encouraging, everything Mike had never been. Within 6 months, I'd helped launch a product that went viral, bringing in millions in revenue. The company promoted me to senior director, and suddenly people were listening to my ideas, valuing my input. I started making friends, real friends who didn't judge me or whisper behind my back. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But late at night, alone in my apartment, I'd sometimes think about my parents. I'd wonder if they ever thought about me, if they regretted missing my wedding. Then I'd remember my mother's voice on that phone call, her casual cruelty, and the wondering would stop. A year into Seattle, I met someone. His name was James, and he worked in software development at a partner company. We met at a conference, bonded over terrible coffee and PowerPoint presentations. He was kind, funny, and genuinely interested in who I was. When I told him about my past, about my parents and my failed marriage, he didn't judge. He just listened, held my hand, and told me that their loss was everyone else's gain. Dating him felt different, lighter. There was no manipulation, no games, just two people getting to know each other. After 6 months, he asked me to move in with him. I hesitated, scared of making another mistake, but James was patient. He never pushed, never demanded. Eventually, I said yes. Living together was easy in a way my marriage never had been. We cooked together, laughed together, built a life that felt real and solid. For the first time since my wedding day, I felt genuinely happy. My mother found me on social media. I'd been careful, kept my profiles private, but she was persistent. The message was short: "We miss you. Can we talk?" I stared at those words for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, wanted to hear what she had to say. But I remembered her voice on that call, her dismissal of my pain. I deleted the message. A week later, she tried again. This time, she mentioned they were having financial problems, that they needed help. That's when everything clicked. She hadn't reached out because she missed me. She'd reached out because she needed something. I blocked her number, blocked her on every platform I could find. James found me crying that night and held me while I explained. "You don't owe them anything," he said. "You never did." He was right. I'd spent so long waiting for them to choose me, to love me, and they never had. Now they wanted back in, but only because I might be useful. I wasn't interested. Work took me to new heights. Our company landed a major contract with an international brand, and I led the campaign. It was featured in marketing magazines, won awards, put me on the map professionally. Reporters wanted interviews. Industry leaders wanted meetings. I was invited to speak at conferences, to share my strategies and insights. My parents somehow found out. They started calling my old friends, asking for my new number, telling people they were so proud of their daughter. The hypocrisy made me sick. They hadn't been proud when I was struggling, when I needed them. They'd abandoned me at my lowest point. Now that I was successful, now that I had something they could brag about, suddenly they cared. One of my old friends forwarded me a message my mother had sent. "Tell her we'd love to see her. Tell her we're so sorry." I laughed when I read it. Sorry for what, exactly? Sorry they got caught? Sorry I wasn't desperate anymore? James proposed on a rainy Saturday in November. We were hiking in the mountains, and he got down on one knee in the mud, rain pouring down on both of us. It was perfect, messy, and real and completely us. I said yes without hesitation. This time, planning a wedding felt different. There was no anxiety, no waiting for people who wouldn't show. James's family welcomed me completely. His mother, Carol, helped me pick a dress and cried when she saw me in it. His father, Thomas, walked me through the ceremony timeline and made sure every detail was perfect. They treated me like I'd always been their daughter. The only shadow was knowing my parents would hear about it eventually. James asked if I wanted to invite them. I told him absolutely not. This wedding was about us, about the family we were choosing, not the one that had chosen to abandon me. He understood. He always understood. The wedding was small and beautiful. 50 people who actually loved us, who had been there through the hard times and the good. Carol cried through the entire ceremony. Thomas made a speech that had everyone laughing and crying at the same time. My boss flew in from Seattle. My friends surrounded us with joy and celebration. Standing at that altar, holding James's hands, I felt something I'd never felt at my first wedding. Peace. Complete, total peace. No anxiety, no waiting for doors to open, no wondering if I was enough. Just love and certainty and the knowledge that I'd found my real family. During the reception, I thought briefly about my parents. I wondered if they knew I'd gotten married again. Then I let the thought go. They didn't deserve space in this moment. This day was mine, built on my terms, with people who'd earned the right to be there. I'd never been happier. 6 months after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. The news hit me like lightning, terrifying and thrilling all at once. James was ecstatic, already planning nurseries and picking out names. Carol started knitting tiny blankets. But for me, pregnancy brought up everything I'd tried to bury. I thought about my mother, about whether she'd been a good mom before she abandoned me. I thought about what kind of mother I'd be, whether I'd repeat her mistakes or create new ones. James noticed my fear and sat me down one night. "You're not her," he said firmly. "You're nothing like her. You're going to be an amazing mother because you know what it feels like to not be chosen. You'll never do that to our child." His words helped, but the fear lingered. I made myself a promise, though. My child would never wonder if they were loved. They'd never stand anywhere, waiting for me to show up, questioning their worth. I would be everything my parents hadn't been. My mother tracked down my work email. The message was long, filled with apologies and explanations. She said they'd been going through a rough time when I got married the first time, that money had been tight and they'd been too ashamed to come. She said she thought about me every day, that missing my wedding was her biggest regret. She said she'd heard I was successful now, married again, and she wanted to be part of my life. The email ended with a request. They were struggling financially, facing foreclosure on their house. Could I help them? Just a loan, she promised. They'd pay me back. I read the email 3 times, feeling different emotions with each pass. First, hope that maybe she really was sorry. Then, anger at the manipulation. Finally, clarity. This wasn't an apology. It was a transaction. She wanted back in because I had something she needed. If I'd still been struggling, still been broken, would she have reached out? I knew the answer. I deleted the email without responding. 2 weeks later, my father called. I'd never blocked his number because I hadn't expected him to actually use it. His voice was gruff, uncomfortable. He said my mother had told him she'd reached out, that I hadn't responded. He asked if I'd gotten the email, if I'd thought about helping them. I stayed silent, letting him talk. He said they'd made mistakes, that they should have been at my wedding. But he said it like he was admitting to forgetting a birthday, not destroying their daughter's most important day. Then he got to the real point. They were desperate. The bank was going to take their house. I was their daughter, and family helped family. That last part made me laugh. Family helped family? Where had that logic been when I was standing at the altar alone? Where had it been when I called crying, when I needed them? I told him I couldn't help. He got angry, called me selfish and ungrateful. I hung up. This time, I blocked his number too. The pregnancy gave me perspective. As my belly grew, as James and I prepared for our daughter's arrival, I realized something important. I'd been carrying my parents' rejection like a weight, letting it define me. But their choices weren't about me. They'd never been about me. They were about their own selfishness, their own inability to love beyond themselves. Understanding that didn't make it hurt less, but it made it mean less. I wasn't unlovable. They were incapable of loving properly. That distinction changed everything. I started therapy to work through the trauma, to make sure I didn't pass it on to my daughter. Carol came with me to doctor appointments when James couldn't make it. Thomas helped us paint the nursery. My friends threw me a baby shower that made me cry happy tears. I was surrounded by people who chose to love me, who showed up without being asked. That was real family. Blood didn't mean anything if it wasn't backed up by action. Emma was born on a Tuesday morning in March. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with James's eyes and my stubbornness. Holding her for the first time, I felt every wall I'd built come crashing down. This tiny person, this perfect little human, was mine to protect and love. I would never fail her the way I'd been failed. Carol and Thomas were at the hospital within an hour, crying over their first grandchild. My friends sent flowers and gifts and messages of love. Even my boss sent a congratulatory basket and told me to take all the time I needed. Everyone who mattered was there. My parents weren't, and for the first time, I didn't care. I didn't wonder if they knew, didn't imagine them showing up. They'd lost the right to this joy. Emma would grow up surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally, and she'd never know the pain of waiting for someone who wouldn't come. That was my gift to her. When Emma was 2 months old, my mother showed up at my door. I don't know how she got my address, but there she was, standing on my porch with tears in her eyes. She said she'd heard about the baby, that she was desperate to meet her granddaughter. She said she'd made terrible mistakes but wanted a chance to make things right. For a moment, holding my sleeping daughter, I was tempted. Part of me wanted to believe in redemption, in second chances. Then I remembered the email asking for money. I remembered my father's angry call. I remembered standing at that altar, alone and humiliated. "You can't," I said simply. "You can't make this right." She started crying, begging. She said family was family, that I couldn't keep her from her granddaughter. That's when I got angry. "You're not family," I said. "Family shows up. Family loves without conditions. You're just people who share my DNA." I closed the door in her face. She stood there for 10 minutes, knocking and calling my name. I didn't answer. Eventually, she left. James found me crying on the couch after she left. Emma was asleep in her bassinet, oblivious to the drama. He held me while I explained, while I second-guessed my decision. Did I do the right thing? I asked. Should I have given her another chance? James pulled back and looked me in the eyes. She had a chance, he said. She had your entire childhood, your wedding day, the months after when you called begging for an explanation. She didn't take any of those chances. She only showed up now because she wants something from you, whether it's money or access to Emma or just the ability to tell people she's a grandmother. You don't owe her anything. He was right. I knew he was right. But letting go of that last thread of hope hurt in ways I hadn't expected. I'd always imagined some future reconciliation, some moment where my parents would realize what they'd lost and genuinely apologize. That fantasy died today. They were never going to change. I had to accept that and move on. My career exploded. The campaign I'd led won a national award, and I was offered a position as VP of marketing at our company. The salary was absurd, the benefits even better. James and I bought a house, a real house with a yard and space for Emma to grow. We filled it with laughter and love and all the things I'd dreamed about as a kid. My parents somehow got our new address. They sent a card congratulating us on the house, the promotion, Emma's birth. The card was signed Love, Mom and Dad, like nothing had happened, like years of silence and rejection could be erased with a Hallmark card. Inside was a note asking if we could start fresh, if they could come visit. I threw the card away. James asked if I wanted to respond, to tell them off. I said no. They didn't deserve my energy, my anger, or my words. Silence was answer enough. They'd made their choices. Now they had to live with the consequences. I'd spent too long letting them occupy space in my head. That space was reserved for Emma now, for James, for the life we were building. Emma's first birthday party was everything. Carol and Thomas rented a bouncy castle. My friends brought gifts and helped with decorations. James made a cake shaped like a unicorn that Emma immediately destroyed with her tiny hands. Everyone laughed and took pictures and celebrated this perfect little person. During the party, Carol pulled me aside. She said she was proud of me, that watching me mother Emma was beautiful. "You're nothing like your parents," she said. "You're everything a mother should be." The words hit harder than I expected. I'd been so scared of failing Emma, of repeating patterns I'd learned. Hearing that I was doing it right, that I was giving Emma what I'd never had, meant everything. That night, after everyone left and Emma was asleep, James and I sat on the porch. "Do you ever regret cutting them off?" he asked. I thought about it. "No," I said. "I regret that they made it necessary. But I don't regret protecting myself and Emma." He nodded, satisfied. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars. I'd built this life from nothing, from the ashes of rejection and heartbreak. And it was beautiful. My father had a heart attack when Emma was 2. My aunt called to tell me, her voice shaky. She said he was in the hospital, that he'd been asking for me. She said maybe this was a chance to reconcile, that life was too short for grudges. I listened politely and told her I'd think about it. James offered to come with me if I wanted to visit. I considered it. Part of me wondered if this was some kind of sign, if I was supposed to rush to his bedside and forgive everything. Then I thought about my wedding day. I thought about all the times I'd needed them and they hadn't shown up. I thought about how they'd only reached out when they wanted something. A heart attack didn't erase years of damage. It didn't make their choices okay. I didn't visit. My father survived, recovered, and was released from the hospital. My aunt called again, disappointed in me. She said I was heartless, that I'd regret this. Maybe I would. But I'd regret giving them another opportunity to hurt me more. Emma started preschool, and I threw myself into being the mother I'd never had. I volunteered in her classroom, helped with art projects, attended every performance and event. Other parents knew me, liked me. Emma thrived, confident and loved and secure. She'd ask about my parents sometimes, having heard other kids talk about grandparents. I'd tell her she had Carol and Thomas, who loved her more than anything. She seemed satisfied with that answer. My career continued to grow. I was speaking at conferences, being profiled in magazines, becoming a name in my industry. Through it all, my parents sent occasional messages. Birthday cards for Emma. Emails asking about holidays. Each time, I deleted them without responding. James asked once if I'd ever tell Emma the truth about them. I said yes, when she was old enough to understand. I'd tell her that sometimes people couldn't love properly, that it wasn't her job to fix them. I'd teach her what I'd learned. You can't make people choose you. You can only choose yourself. My mother tried one last time when Emma was 5. She showed up at Emma's school, claiming to be her grandmother, asking to pick her up. The school, thank God, had strict protocols. They called me immediately. I arrived to find my mother arguing with the principal, insisting she had rights as a grandparent. When she saw me, her face changed. She started crying, begging, saying she just wanted to know Emma. I was so angry I could barely speak. Using my daughter to manipulate me, trying to force contact through a child, was beyond acceptable. I told her if she ever came near Emma again, I'd file for a restraining order. She left, finally understanding that I meant every word. That night, I held Emma close. She asked who the crying lady was. I told her she was nobody important, just someone confused. Emma accepted that and moved on, already forgetting. That's when I knew I'd won. My daughter's life was so full of love that one stranger's tears didn't impact her. She was secure, happy, and whole. Everything I'd fought for had worked. Years passed. Emma grew into an incredible kid, smart and kind and confident. James and I celebrated anniversaries, built careers, created a life that still amazed me sometimes. I never heard from my parents again. Maybe they finally understood. Maybe they moved on to other disappointments. I didn't know and didn't care. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about my wedding day. That girl in the white dress, waiting for parents who never came. She felt like a stranger now, someone I used to be. I'd survived that day, survived the betrayal and heartbreak. I'd built something beautiful from the ruins. Emma would never stand anywhere, waiting and wondering if she was enough. She'd never question her worth or doubt her value. I'd made sure of that. Looking at my family, my real family, I felt something I'd spent years chasing. Peace. Complete, unshakable peace. I didn't need my parents. I'd never needed them. I just needed to believe in myself enough to build something better. And I had. My life was mine, built on my terms, filled with people who'd earned their place. That was everything.